Hello everyone, and welcome back to the video series The White Lie. Today I want to share with you a question that often comes up with my colleagues and students as we talk about whiteness. This question usually takes some form of how did white supremacy begin? In a world where the majority of people are non-white, how did whites end up with power? I'd like to begin to try and address that question in this video. Before we dive into this complicated question, I want to be sure to emphasize my limitations. The history and origin of white supremacy is a vast area of study, with hundreds, if not thousands, of books written on the subject. There's just no way that this video will fully recognize and represent all of this work. However, the question of how white supremacy first emerged is an important one that truly deserves our attention. It is also important to recognize that for the non-white persons watching this video, the complexity and impact of white supremacy can trigger powerful feelings of anger, frustration, and sadness. These feelings are valid, and they are important. Please take time to tend to these emotions in ways that help you to feel whole. On the other hand, for the white folks watching, you may experience resistance, anger, or guilt. I would encourage you to take the time to interrogate these feelings, noticing how you experience them in response to this information, and to do so with great care. At the end of the day, my hope with this video is to provide a brief version of this history that points out the lies central to the myth of white supremacy, while also providing some resources to help you all dive deeper. With all that said, let's start as close to the beginning as we can in the 18th century. Although white supremacy is closely tied to colonialism, mercantile capitalism, and the exploitation of non-Western countries, its roots in what is now the United States can be found in the transatlantic slave trade. Prior to the 18th century, European countries and cultures engaged in fierce exploitation of African, Asian, and indigenous cultures for resources such as sugar and tobacco. However, the integration of racial categories as a determinant of oppressor and oppressed was an intentional choice made in the early years of the United States. The consequences of this choice remain with us to this very day. In the Americas, the transatlantic slave trade was driven by a need for more laborers to work the plantation fields for the profitable crops of sugar, cotton, rice, and tobacco. However, the white Americans who owned those plantations quickly realized that by kidnapping such a substantial part of their labor force, they became outnumbered. They knew the violent murder, torture, and abuse they heaped upon the African enslaved people, which caused white slave owners to fear retaliation. The increasingly successful revolts and bids for freedom by enslaved people such as Gabriel Prosser, Denmark Vesey, and Nat Turner, coupled with the resentment of the landowning class by the poor whites, added fuel into the fire of these fears. So in order to preserve their social and economic dominance, the white landowners gradually created a racial caste and social narrative born to divide the free whites from the enslaved blacks. Legal distinctions between whites and blacks were coupled with pseudo-scientific beliefs about the intelligence, ability, and humanity of black persons. In order to justify the immense system of violence required to maintain white supremacy, whites had to be convinced that their actions were morally good, necessary, and in their best interest. A burst of skewed and distorted theology, pseudoscience, and myths that describe black persons as violent, less than humans worked to justify their immoral acts of oppression. Poor and rich alike, American whites devoured these white lies with gusto. The poor whites found solidarity with their rich oppressors in their power to oppress the black undercaste, and the rich landowners felt secure in the legal and social protection this solidarity provided them. Together, whites became increasingly dedicated to the self-interested lies of white superiority and black inferiority. In a nutshell, this is how the American brand of white supremacy was born. To say that this is the tip of the iceberg is a vast understatement. I want to emphasize again that this is the briefest of overviews. To help you do your own research and develop your own understanding, there will be some resources for you to explore at the end of this video. I hope you'll join me again next week, when we will continue to follow the thread of white supremacy's early beginnings to the present day. Goodbye for now.